doing.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good evening. My name is Faisal, Kassim, and welcome to Live Roll Talk. It's exactly 15 minutes past 8 o'clock on the 16th day of March 2023. Less than 10 days to Ramadan. Just to confirm the Islamic calendar, today is actually the, I think, give me a second, just trying to get the right date. The Islamic calendar month, we are looking at the 23rd of Shaban 1444. Very few days left until Ramadan 1444. How have you prepared for it? And tonight we are talking about the International Week Against Apartheid State. You are aware that at least this is the 18th year since the IAW started, where it focuses so much on BDS, that is boycott, divestment and sanctions. This is in a bid to try and help people in Palestine who are being oppressed by the apartheid Israeli state. As of this morning, at least 83 people are on record to have been killed by the apartheid Israeli state since 2023. Of course, this is suspected, or this is foreseen to overtake the number of 170 people who were killed by the Israeli state in the year 2022. The whole year of 2022, it was 170. Right now, we are just mid-March and we're looking at 83 people killed so far. That is 4 people who were killed this morning in Jenin, totaled the number to 83. Tonight, to help me discuss about the International Week Against Apartheid State, I have in studio Nami Barasa, who is an activist, and Rasha Al-Jindi. Ladies, assalamu alaikum and good evening, and thank you so much for making time for us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's start with you, Naomi. For how long, for Russia, for the argument's sake, for the audience sake, they'll say, at the end of the day, she looks Palestinian. At the end of the day, looks like that is her home. So maybe it's justified for her to fight for her people, right? Maybe at the end of the day, that's what the audience may think. But what about you, Naomi? You look Kenyan. You sound Kenyan. Your name looks Kenyan, but you're here on set tonight to talk about apartheid carried out by the Israeli government. For how long have you been involved in these activities or this movement, Naomi?
Thank you so much. And that's a very interesting question. I didn't expect that, but I would like to say that, okay, I've been in the in the Palestinian liberation discourse as an activist for 6 years, even though I took a break the last 2 years. I had personal challenges and I couldn't keep up. And so I just took a break and I haven't even fully come back, but yeah. I have 3 reasons for me very compelling that make me want to always be part of this Palestinian struggle. One reason is because any injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So the Palestinian injustice or injustice on Palestinians is injustice on me, regardless of my geographical positioning. The second reason is because the conditions in which I see Palestinians go through in those illegal settlements resonate so much with my personal story. I grew up in the slum of Korogosho. You know Korogosho if you are a Nairobian. It's one of the largest slums in Kenya. And the dehumanizing conditions that I see in Palestine are so similar with what I grew up experiencing in Korogosho. So for me, it's just part of my, experience, my story. And thirdly, Kenya and Kenyans have a history of colonialism. we experienced colonialism by the British, and what we went through is exactly what Palestine is going through. And for me, sometimes, I feel a bit disappointed when the world calls this apartheid. We should just call it colonialism, period. And so because we come from a history of colonialism, and what we experience is similar, we have the obligation, a moral obligation, to stand up with the people of Palestine and denounce what is happening there. Otherwise, we will be judged harshly by history and her story.
Wow, wow, indeed, very compelling. Thank you so much for that. Rasha Al-Jundi, you are a storyteller, visual storyteller, and an activist, right? That is what you do. For how long have you been involved, and what actually pushed you into this whole fight for Palestinian liberation?
Well, as you said, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me today. And thank you, Naomi, for that very compelling starting point. As you said, being Palestinian, maybe, it's true that it's a maybe, but for me it's for sure. I grew up with the story of Palestine and the occupation and the colonization of Palestine. And my parents told me about it. I was watching them talk about it. My mother was 4 months old when her family was forcefully uprooted from their village that is just south of Jaffa, called Beit Dajan. Now it's a depopulated village, completely changed into a Jewish town, village. And they got displaced into Hebron first, the current occupied West Bank, and then my mother also was separated from her father for 3 years. So the story is...
Forcefully separated?
Yeah, I mean, during that... Israeli terrorists. Yeah, let's say during that turmoil of the village being depopulated, some villages went through actual violent fights to protect their lands. And there was a separation of some families. They got reunited after 3 years, and she ended up in refugee camp in Jordan. So this story alone is one of the reasons why I was definitely put in that position early on to understand where I come from, understand that what's happening is completely unjust, and why I grew up in the United Arab Emirates, not in my home country, and you know, where we come from and how this is going to unravel later in my life. So I was into activism, whether joining demonstrations or organizing them later in university and so on, yeah, since early on.
Wow, wow. Thanks so much for that. And of course, just sticking with you, Rasha Al-Jundi, we'd like to understand, for those years that you've been involved, I'm sure growing up, you've been reading about it, you've been getting more information about it, and if anything, now you've transited to now telling people the stories about it. From your own analysis, from where you come from, what do you think is fueling this conflict, this current apartheid state that is ongoing, the Israeli terrorists that keep on pushing and being offensive against the Palestinian people? What do you think is actually fueling that conflict? Because think about it, a car cannot move without petrol. This studio and station cannot move without lights and the human resource and the cameras and all these things. So these are the driving factors or driving forces behind a successful show at the end of the day, right? And the fuel is one of the key determinants or key drivers of a successful vehicle or mobility at the end of the day. So what do you think is fueling this conflict that is witnessed in Palestine right now?
Well, I want to go back also to what Naomi ended her entry points with. I just want to go back to the word of colonization and just start with it and end with it, because a colonizer is a colonizer, and there's like a blueprint that everybody uses, right, everywhere, and the whole point, what fuels it, is dominance. So the whole idea is really to dominate. Israel never actually defined its borders, by the way, and many people don't know that, because there is a bigger plan to have a greater Israel. And this is only going to happen by ethnically cleansing the Palestinians. I think my people pose a very big demographic dilemma for Israel, because their speech and their narrative is that they want to have a Jewish state, and a Jewish state cannot happen with this many Palestinians on the land. They were not really successful in driving 100% of them out, and that, as many people like to describe it, and I also like to describe it, we remain like a thrown in their throat, you know. And I also want to go back to one of the words that you mentioned, and I would like to counter it by saying it's not really a conflict. It is a colonizer against a colonized. It is an occupier against an occupied. And this is where we always have to start any conversation when we talk about where we are now. It's really a 75-year, actually more than 100 years, I would say. Yeah. Because that started in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, which basically is declaring war against Palestinians.
A lot of people actually think that it started in 1948.
Yes, of course. That's like the declaration of the state of Israel started, you know, kind of climaxed on May 15th, but it actually started before and continued until well into 1949. Some people argue that it continues until today, because it kind of, as you said, 83 people killed so far, and we're still mid-March only, and it's not really even, we're not really finished with the first quarter of the year. So that means it's a slow ethnic cleansing of people. That's in addition to the other policies of blockading and the wall, the annexation wall, and so many that I can, you know, the prisoners and the remains of the people who were killed that are not handed over to their loved ones, and the home demolitions and the Bedouins and the you know, erasure of villages and so on. So these are all policies that are aiming to ethnically cleanse this land of any Palestinian, and this is what is fueling the need to dominate this land with white settlers. Even if they're not white, Jewish settlers. That's basically the idea.
Thank you so much, Rasha, for that very comprehensive answer. And now, just to add on to that, you've been an activist. You say this is the 6th year, and several activists before, thousands or probably millions across the world, have come out on social media, digital media, on TVs, and many other platforms to come out and have their voices to be heard on this matter. Some of these attempts resulted into several dialogue, peace missions, quote unquote, the UN declarations, quote unquote. Recently, I think 2 years ago, the African Union, the AU, denied Israel to be part and parcel of the AU convention and all that. A number of things have been happening, but still, the fact that we are here tonight to talk about the colonization, right, that is ongoing right now in Palestine, it means that the issue is yet to be resolved, correct? Why do you think that's the issue, Naomi?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we've been at it for a long time.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't see a lot of goodwill from the powers that be. There's a lot of activism by people who will voice out, by people who will give solidarity, by people who stand with the colonized. But there is very little action from the decision makers, from the actors, from the duty bearers who have the obligation to make sure that Palestinians live free from colonization, live with dignity, live their lives like any other human being, because as far as the UDHR is concerned, we are all born equal in law and dignity, but we do not see that translating into action as far as the duty bearers are concerned. For example, one of the institutions I'm so mad about is the UN. The UN created this problem. Yet, the UN doesn't seem to be taking a front line to resolve it. And I keep asking, why is it that the UN is not doing much? Whenever there's, and let's not even, and she said it correctly, let's not even talk about a conflict. There's no conflict. There's just a people being dominated by another that feels more superior. That goes against all international treaties that safeguard human rights. The very treaties that are there to be enforced by the UN, but we do not see this happening on Palestine.
As activists with whatever platforms that you may have, be it Kenyans against apartheid or Kenyans in solidarity with Palestine, or whatever platform you may have you tried to voice this with the relevant authorities within the UN?
Yes, we did. We do. And you rightfully talked about the AU reversing its decision. It wasn't 2 years. It is 2 years that the AU gave an observer status to Israel, but it just recently denounced that and expelled them from. So this is because of the pressure that activists have been, especially people who in Africa and other continents who are standing in solidarity with Palestine. And we voiced out as the people of Africa, of this continent, that it is a disgrace for this continent and AU as the institution, you know, bringing Africa together to give status to, and that's why they were expelled. So it wasn't just because they felt nice.
But it was a heated debate in Addis Ababa, you can remember, until even they were caught in court, given the observer status. It was a very heated debate with a lot of lobbying and a lot of conflict and a lot of debate, even amongst member states of the EU.
But I'll also tell you that that Israel has been using very, very many strategies to coerce, to coerce, but also to, what's the word, to
forceful.
No, not even. Okay, so of course they use forceful, but they also use the word is going when
influence,
not bribing, even, whatever.
So a softer word.
Twisting.
It's the word is gone, but basically luring. So they've been using many strategies to lure, to coerce, to, you know, they give African countries resources, armed resources. They give the African continent through the government technological resources. They come and influence agriculture and everything, irrigation. So people start seeing them as that good partner that needs to be close to us, because the other side of Israel is not being said loud enough. I'll tell you, for example, even for us who are activists, it doesn't just come as a park, a walk in the park. For example, me, Twitter has
blocked you.
Twitter has now blocked me. Well, they haven't fully blocked me. So what they've simply done,
they're restricting your views.
So they've seriously restricted me so that if I post something, my followers will not see. And if my followers post something, tweet or retweet, I will not see. Essentially, that's blocking me. So I can't use Twitter. Simply because in the last 4 months that I've been not so active on Palestinian issues, I've been using Twitter to tell the world what I know about Palestine. And they just decided, so with this, the voice is not going to be loud enough, but also what are the duty bearers doing about that? To me, I simply think the rest of us as people, we are in solidarity, we want change, but the duty bearers are doing nothing.
So there is lack of goodwill from the powers that be.
Yes, but also there's a lot of support from America, and I find it annoying because it's material, it's armed resources towards destroying Palestine. So they are not just on their own, they also have support from
big brothers,
like-minded.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I wanted to hold it at that, and when we come back, we're going to look at few things, including the Qatar World Cup in 2022 was kinda dedicated to Palestine. Did it have any impact? What are some of the goodies, or what are some of the positives, strands that were witnessed from that? This and much more after a very, very, very short break. We need to pay our bills, guys.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation. Verse of the day.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.
Enyi mlioamini, munapoitwa kuhudhuria swala ya Ijumaa, fanyeni haraka kuikimbilia, muache biashara zenu, hilo ni bora ikiwa mwelewa.
Isikilizeni kwa umakinifu khutba ya Ijumaa
ili uzidi kujenga imani yako na kupata faida nyingi ya siku hii.
Coming to you every Friday from Jamia Mosque, Nairobi.
Live on HorizonTV.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Thank you so much, Aban Shihemi. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for keeping it live, Real Talk. My name is Faisal Kassim, and we are still talking about the colonization that is ongoing right now in Palestine, of course. And we spoke about what has been happening, the background, the context of the whole situation right now. But again, after the break, remember I told you about what happened in Qatar the year 2022. Now, Rush, I'm going to start with you. The Qatari 2022 World Cup was more or less dedicated to Palestine. I mean, Palestine was recognized as a state, something that a lot of people in the world are shying away from because of how big and bullish the state of Israel can be. So a lot of people, Palestine was recognized. You saw the sports minister in Qatar wearing an armband of Palestine. So a lot of signals, of course, in support and in solidarity with Palestine from the World Cup. Did it have an impact at the end of the day on the current situation in Palestine?
I think it was very heartwarming for sure, especially the solidarity that the people showed. Despite many of their people of different nationalities, Western, mostly of course Arab fans from different parts of the Middle East and North Africa, but also others. I'm not really sure it had an impact on the situation on the ground. However, it did, I believe, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I believe it has and still has an impact on showing that the solidarity among people in this whole region and beyond is actually very strong. And despite some of their governments that have signed either normalization pacts with Israel or are sympathizers or are kind of quiet, silent, kind of bystanders. So this, I think it broke down the myth that the people of the Middle East, North Africa and beyond don't care. They do. And it was really heartwarming to see Palestine as a cause remembered by the Moroccan team and others as well, but specifically because Morocco made it towards really
finals,
we were all rooting for it.
Actually, the semi-finals,
but by others as well, and it was really, I think it was just heartwarming, and it just reminded the Palestinians and myself included that there's a lot of love, and there's a lot of there is hope, and there's love, and there's solidarity, and it's not the governments that signed normalization treaties with Israel in the Middle East and North Africa are not do not represent their people. So that's very good.
Can I add something on that?
Yeah. Okay.
From a campaigner's perspective, I'm a strategic campaigner by profession. From a campaign's perspective, I think it had a lot of impact, even to the situation
on the ground.
But to begin with, increasing the legitimacy of the Palestinian question, for me, is very critical if the war is to be won. Because remember, we come from a background where there's a lot of propaganda against Palestine. So having, like teams like Morocco and other players just, flagging that, Palestinian flag, but that's very important. But on the ground, you just started by showing us the statistics on the difference between, in the last 3 months, the death toll and last year. Looking at that alone tells you how Israel is feeling about the love, the understanding, and the information that is going around the world about Palestine, and that's why they are responding. So for me, those are kicks of a dying donkey. Of course, it's not going to be very, very soon, but those are very clear signs that Israel is feeling that the world has started knowing the truth, and the world is standing with Palestine.
And also there was a lot of people who turned away from Israeli reporters who showed up in the World Cup. It was very clear that people where I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to even normalize that relationship. That is just acknowledging that you are here representing the oppressive colonization state. So that was very, I think that was one of the signs where they were like, nobody wants to talk to us. So there was a clear rejection.
Even AU withdrawing, expelling them, is as a result of that. And when we were campaigning and lobbying the different states in AU, Morocco was not an easy one to convince. But now by their team, who's made the whole Africa proud, just taking that action, for me that was very, very remarkable. Even contributed significantly to AU expelling them. So for
could there be ways maybe to capitalize on the emotions and the empathy, not just in Qatar, but again in many other countries in the world, particularly in the Gulf countries, to, let's say, for example, fundraise or mobilize resources to support those who are being currently oppressed in Palestine? Because with these killings, a number of people have been left orphans, a number of people have been left as internally displaced persons, and a number of people are in dire need of help, considering the current global warming that is witnessed and felt even in Nairobi. So basically there are a lot of humanitarian need even in Palestine. Could we possibly, or could you possibly take advantage of the empathy, of course courtesy of the World Cup, to try and mobilize resources to support some of those people?
I think the resources are always there. There's a lot of in that how do you say it, spectrum of humanitarian aid. I think the resources are there, but Palestinians need, as we just talked about it, they need more. They need freedom. So I mean, at the individual level, at the family level, through institutions, whether they are based in the Gulf or otherwise, there are, institutions and organizations, and everybody's trying to work to help families or needs and so on. Many different programs, but I think there's a need beyond this, and I don't like to always just categorize Palestine and the cause in a humanitarian sort of spectrum, right? We help each other a lot. There are resources, and people also help each other within the occupied territories. The solidarity that is needed needs to kind of be translated, and this is the tough part, be translated vertically, not horizontally, because among people now we have, I think, proven that the people are with the people, and their governments don't represent them. That's basically, these are two facts that have been made clear to the people in power.
But again, now, how is it helping towards the Palestinian freedom?
That's the tough part. The tough part is translating it vertically upwards, and having that influence and working on, as you said, through different campaigns and through different activists to push this this vibrance of the people and this wish upwards. And this happened recently in Barcelona, was one example where, I think it was activism and activists on the ground, the civil society, that pushed the mayor to freeze relationships with Israel. And this was, for me, a clear example of where the people's power really, and of course campaigners, people who strategize on how to actually put it into words and then lobby the right people in order to reach that push. Because it's not just, going around and raising banners, but it really needs people like Naomi to kind of put it into a strategy and which buttons we have to push and what time, and which is the most strategic way to kind of pass the message, and also find those people who are the small champions, right? Because sometimes you have that champion who's maybe going to be helping you to translate it upwards, but it's going to take time, and a lot of changes in the region will also, Palestine and the cause is not happening in isolation of whatever is happening also in the world and the region. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thanks so much for that. Now I'm going to come to you. IAW has been in existence for the past 18 years right now, right? We've been having the International Week Against Apartheid. I mean, it's something that started in 2005, and of course there was a whole rage, especially during its early years, about boycott, divestments and sanctions. I mean, of course, at our level, at the horizontal level, at the Mwananchi level, the common man level, we were focusing so much on the boycott, right? Which at some point really had a huge impact on those companies that are actually supporting the apartheid. So from where you said 18 years down the line, and you've taken part in 6 so far, can you tell whether there is an impact on this International Week Against Apartheid, or what exactly are we doing? Because this is a concept that, of course, we saw a proof of this concept in South Africa during the apartheid regime in South Africa, and it really worked within quite a short span, right? Compared to right now, we're talking about 18 years right now. So what impact can you say that has been witnessed courtesy of BDS, boycott, divestments and sanctions?
Thank you for that question. I think if we were to compare the South African situation and the Palestinian situation, of course the South African situation, the BDS in South Africa was fast enough because there was global support from all manner of countries and individuals. And so the kind of support the BDS in South Africa got was immense, was enormous. That is what is lacking for Palestine. And part of the problem for me, from my perspective, is the Western media. How the Western media has conceptualized the problem in Palestine. They even call it a conflict. It's not a conflict, for heaven's sake. There's no conflict. Conflicts usually are between two parties that might have some equal powers. This is a colonizer and a colonized party. And when the Western media starts talking about this situation, they talk as if Palestinian is contributing equally to the problem. They're not. So if we start unpacking the problem correctly, even the BDS struggle itself will succeed. The other thing that I find a little problematic about and even BDS, and I have this problem. BDS, as has been looked from the Palestinian perspective, has come in with a lot of sanction of, like, if Palestinians throw stones to people who have guns and bombs, then that is violence. That's not violence. And until we start looking at that thing correctly, there will not be as much support as there was. So if the support is concerted, then the push will be bigger and shorter. But the BDS support in the Palestinian question has been very divided and not very, very well articulated. For me, that is problematic. And also, some of the companies that should be boycotted properly are the very companies that bring a lot of those humanitarian supports in this part of the world. Then the problem again is not perceived correctly. So I think there's a lot of propaganda problems, propaganda-related problems that will not help the BDS achieve the desired results as fast as South Africa.
But again,
wants.
there are other media platforms, for example, HorizonTV, that has been in support of the Free Palestine movement for the longest time. We have Al Jazeera. So if you're talking about telling the story the way it is, have you tried to take advantage of the alternative media sources apart from blaming the Western media?
Well, we take, and thank you so much, because I come from Kenya and a Palestine movement, and we have really, really benefited from your support as a group, as a movement. Al Jazeera, yes. But if you look at the resources around alternative media compared to the resources around in this other Western media and mainstream media, it's very little. And I initially talked about the sanctions that come with people who dare use their social media to tell the story as it is, you understand? So I'm not saying that no one is doing something, but there's a lot of resources there are a lot of resources that have been put in telling the story wrongly, but also the BDS itself should desist from talking about violence when it talks about Palestinians throwing stones. That's just resistance. You can't watch someone killing your baby and you watch and smile. You will resist. Unfortunately, they do not even have power enough to resist. And the little that they use is used against them. And finally, also, we would like to talk about the anti-Semitism narrative. That is used against us who want to talk about the problem. So anytime you attempt to talk about this, you are branded. I keep thinking, can't we even do away with this bloody Semitism thing? Because we can use it on Palestinians as well, you know? So I think there are many forces that work against BDS in Palestine as opposed to how it was in South Africa.
No, thank you. Thanks so much, Naomi, for unpacking it so well and so comprehensively. My dear sister, Aljant, are we expecting any new tactics for as far as activism against the apartheid state, apartheid Israeli state is concerned? Are we expecting any new tricks apart from the conventional or right now traditional one, BDS, traditional, two, activism, making noise about it on social media? Are we, or should we expect any new tactics that would involve a lot of people, a lot of the Monanchis at the horizontal level?
Wow, that's a big question. Are we? Naomi, are
yes,
we
yes, we are.
From my side, I think my approach actually to it now, given that I've recently shifted my work from development humanitarian sector to visual arts, my shift or my approach now is to do it through visuals and to do something different using images rather than, and to talk to people that are outside, because I am outside. So I think for for Palestinians inside living under the occupation, it is them to decide how they want to resist. And I wouldn't even, as you said, not violence. I would say armed or unarmed resistance. This is their call, and we have no right to tell people how to resist an occupier. But I think for us outside, from my side, I think there's many different artists that are using different ways of expressing solidarity and activism and kind of deciphering all those words and sending the right message across. So what is anti-Semitism and what is, criticizing Zionist colonizer, the difference between them, and trying to always fight all those small fights. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of energy, and sometimes you find yourself spending a lot of energy doing things that you shouldn't be doing because you're being attacked, but you should actually be working for Palestine. And that's, again, going back to your point, really putting us always in the corner as activists outside. But we should always fight the fight and never take this nonsense and just accept it. It is part of the resistance from outside. So I think the tactic from my side would be just always to use something alternative and to fight all those narratives that are being pushed. And I agree with you that I feel Israel is feeling the pressure because they spend a lot of money on social media platforms to keep this narrative up. And I think that's our way forward, is to really use alternative visuals and alternative arts to send this message in a different way to people, because people will read mainstream media and they will believe what they want to believe, and I think we have to reach them in many different ways, especially the ones living in states that are very influential and supportive of Israel, and people have the power there to change by voting for their leaders. So this is how we need to target it, in my opinion. And on the other hand, is also building alliances with anti-Zionist Jewish communities, because their identity is also being put in the corner of being you either with us or against us by the Zionist state if you're a Jew. And I feel like there's a lot of them that are coming out now saying, not in my name, my culture and my identity is way more complex than this, so don't put me in this corner, and I am anti-Zionist. So I think they're extremely brave for saying this, and I think we need to start building alliances from the outside in order to start pushing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But just one more addition.
Yes, please.
But also
Very
the fact that
quickly.
organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch are coming up with reports that are forensic evidence on what is happening there adds a lot of legitimacy to the whole discourse. And some of the churches who have been going, I've met 3 or 4 people who have been very, very pro Israel and thinking that Israel is the holy land of God, who have changed mind because now there is evidence, there are facts about Israel. So it might take long, but we will
and a change of perspective. Wow, thank you so much for that, because I'm told there is an advertisement that should run exactly in 60 seconds from now, and you need to pay our bills. But again, before I let you go, I just need to thank our guests. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Every time we talk about the Palestinian issue, I always leave you with one message. One, not 2, not 3. One message. When these people in Palestine are complaining right now, we may be comfortable in our homes and say that that is none of our business. You know why? You have your shelter above you, you have your food at the end of the table, you have your family secure and safe, and you have your job or school or business that you go to every single day. But again, today is Palestine. Who knows about tomorrow? They may be right here on our doorsteps, and then who will be there to speak on our behalf if right now you don't want to speak on Palestinians' behalf? My name is Faisal Kassim, and this has been the Live Real Talk. Until next week, same place, same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.